They never admit it out loud. But the moment a Sigma enters the picture, something shifts. The air changes. The jokes stop landing the same way. The confident ones start second-guessing themselves. Suddenly, everyone's watching the man who isn't trying to be watched. It's not magic. It's energy, the kind that can't be faked or rehearsed. Most people spend their lives performing, polishing, pretending. Then a Sigma walks in, someone who's done none of that, and their entire illusion begins to fracture. They sense something they can't explain. Control without force, confidence without noise, purpose without performance. And that's when the quiet panic starts, because deep down they recognize what they're looking at. Not a man trying to be chosen, but one who already is. They don't fear your presence, they fear what it reminds them of, who they could have been if they hadn't settled. The Sigma male never asks to be seen, yet somehow everyone does. He doesn't chase status, but status orbits him anyway. He doesn't speak to prove intelligence, his silence does it better. People sense something different, something unsettling. Recognition doesn't happen in words, it happens in tension. The room adjusts when he's around. People mirror his energy without realizing it. They either want to follow him, compete with him, or destroy him, and sometimes all three at once. But here's the twist, the Sigma doesn't bask in that recognition. He doesn't even care for it. He knows what happens next. The same people who admire him start acting differently, not because he changed, but because they can't unsee what he represents. They start to orbit him, test him, question him, copy him, or even turn against him. Because when people realize they're standing next to a man who doesn't play their game, they'll either evolve or collapse. Let's break down the 8 things people do when they realize the Sigma is the chosen one, not because he claims it, but because his presence exposes every weakness they've tried to hide. 1. They start copying his energy while pretending they don't. The first thing people do when they recognize a Sigma's power is mimic it. They start dressing like him, moving like him, talking like him. It's not flattery, it's survival instinct. They sense his dominance isn't in muscles or money, but in detachment. He's not loud, he's not performing, he's just present-centered, aware, unfazed. And because people live addicted to attention, they mistake that stillness for mystery. They think, oh, if I act like that, maybe I'll feel like that. But here's the brutal truth. Sigma energy can't be copied. It's not an aesthetic, it's a mindset forged through solitude, loss, and self-discipline. You can borrow the look, but you can't fake the scars that built it. They'll imitate his confidence, but crumble under the same silence he thrives in. They'll wear his calm like a costume, but the moment reality tests them, the mask falls. You can copy the posture, not the piece that built it. The Sigma doesn't call them out, he just watches, because he knows imitation always exposes the imitator, not the original. 2, they start competing with him without realizing why. Once they realize they can't imitate him, they start to compete. But here's the thing, he's not even playing. The Sigma doesn't chase status. He doesn't measure himself by trophies or applause. Yet somehow his existence threatens those who do. His quiet progress, his self-contained drive, it makes the achievers feel hollow. They start trying to outshine him, outperform him, or outtalk him. But competing with someone who doesn't care about winning is a losing game. The Sigma's edge is psychological. You can't beat a man who's already at peace with himself. He's not chasing validation, he's chasing evolution. While others fight to be seen, he's busy becoming invisible, not because he's hiding, but because he's moved beyond needing recognition. Their obsession with proving themselves becomes their downfall. He doesn't even have to react. His silence becomes their scoreboard. The loudest competition always loses to the man who isn't competing. 3, they test his boundaries to see if he's real. When admiration turns to curiosity, people start testing him. They push his patience, challenge his calm, question his beliefs not because they hate him, but because they want to see if his composure is real. They've met fake calm before, the kind that shatters under pressure, but the Sigma's stillness is different. It's earned. When they test him, they're looking for cracks, but what they find instead is control. He doesn't flinch, he doesn't react. He simply observes. And in that moment, they realize he isn't pretending. He's built different, emotionally disciplined in a world that thrives on chaos. They may even provoke him on purpose, trying to get a rise out of him. But the Sigma's restraint isn't passivity, it's dominance. By not engaging, he makes them feel smaller. His silence isn't weakness, it's a mirror showing you your own noise. 4. They start confiding in him even when he didn't ask. People are drawn to Sigma men like confessionals. They start oversharing, revealing secrets, talking about things they've never said aloud. Why? Because his presence feels safe, yet unpredictable. He doesn't judge, doesn't gossip, doesn't respond with fake empathy. He just listens deeply, quietly. And that kind of attention is rare. But here's the twist. People don't realize they're exposing themselves. They open up because they crave the calm he carries, hoping some of it will rub off. But the Sigma listens not to comfort, to understand. That's his power. Emotional X-ray vision. He doesn't react to words, he reads intentions. And that makes people both comforted and terrified. People spill their souls to those who never asked to hear them. 5. They try to control or recruit him and fail. Once they realize they can't outshine him, people try a new approach. Control him. They'll offer him roles, positions, partnerships, and promises anything to bring his influence under their system. They tell him things like, "We could really use someone like you." But what they mean is, "We want to use what you have." The Sigma always sees through it. He understands that most offers aren't opportunities, they're traps disguised as praise. He knows his independence is the real threat, because the moment you can't control someone, you either try to destroy them or make them part of your system. But he doesn't bend. He walks away politely, decisively, and every time he does, they panic, because deep down, they know the one who can't be bought owns everything. They don't want you to join them. They want to tame what they can't become. 6. They start resenting him for the same qualities they once admired. Admiration always turns sour when envy grows roots. At first they loved his calm, then they called it arrogance. They loved his independence, now they call it selfishness. They praised his solitude, now they whisper that he's broken. People's admiration has an expiration date right after they realize they can't control what they admire. The Sigma doesn't feed resentment. He doesn't argue or defend his character. He lets perception collapse under its own weight, because resentment is self-punishment. The more they envy him, the more miserable they become. He understands a brutal truth most never will. People don't hate what you are, they hate what you expose in them. He remains composed even when misunderstood, because he knows their resentment is proof that his presence is still shaking their illusions. 7. They start following him in secret. Not all recognition is loud. Some people will dismiss him in public, then study his every move in private. They'll watch how he speaks, what he does, how he carries himself. They'll replay his words in their heads and pretend they came up with them. He's not a celebrity. He's a reference point, a quiet benchmark of authenticity they can't ignore. The Sigma knows he's being watched, but he doesn't perform for it. He lives so sharply aligned with his own code that even those who envy him can't help but learn from him. He doesn't ask to lead, his consistency makes him the blueprint. They'll copy your moves and call them original. Let them. You've already moved on to the next chapter. 8. They distance themselves not because they want to, but because they can't handle him. The final stage of recognition is retreat. After the admiration, imitation, competition, and resentment, people begin to pull away. Not because they've stopped caring, but because being around him forces reflection they can't sustain. His very existence challenges their comfort. His calm exposes their chaos. His independence highlights their dependence. And instead of evolving, most retreat into what's safe. He doesn't chase them. He doesn't explain. He knows that truth has a gravity of its own, and not everyone survives the orbit. So he lets them go. Because if being yourself costs you everyone who can't handle it, that's not loss, it's cleansing. When your peace becomes their discomfort, your evolution has begun. On a final note, the Sigma never asks to be chosen. That's what makes him the chosen one. People recognize it not through his words, but through the unease his presence brings. He doesn't need followers, titles, or applause. His power lies in how others can't fake what he is. He doesn't convince the world, he reminds it what truth looks like in motion. And truth, by nature, divides. They'll copy, compete, test, and eventually retreat. But in the end, they'll remember him. Because every encounter with a Sigma leaves a mark not on the Sigma, but on the people who realize they just met someone free in a world still chained. The chosen one never seeks the crown. He becomes the reason others realize they were never ready to wear it.